some of our story. The reason I say some is because our story continues to this day, and I'm not going to tell you 12 years ago, but I'm going to just tell you about the activities I was involved with on 9/11. Anyway, having said that, this is our first stop. It's called the Firefighter Memorial. It's a particularly important stop to me because I was with the U.S. Fire Department on 9/11 down here and have been working for them for 27 years. On that day, 343 firefighters murdered. Their names are on the bottom of this, from one end to the other. That's why I want you to see the length of it. 343 firefighters. Because I was on the job for over 27 years at the time, I probably know do at least 80 of them, maybe up to 100. I never really counted, but every time I see names, it says, oh yeah, I remember that. So this means a lot to me. And it's have never been recovered. So their family members have never been able to give them a proper burial. So the family members view this space as their cemetery, a place where they can come to be with their loved ones. So that's why we look at it as hallowed ground. Certainly due to respect. Having said that, I'll give you an idea for those of you who have never seen the towers. This is how they stood out on the Manhattan skyline. They were really overwhelming in size, as you can see, to the rest of the area. 110 stories, 2 buildings side by side. They weren't really popular in New York when they first opened. And the discussion went on until finally they agreed that there would be a memorial plaza. And by virtue of having a memorial plaza, that meant that the buildings that would be rebuilt on the site would once again be tall buildings. This is just another view of the Twin Towers, again the Marriott Hotel, and this plaza where people gathered and became friends. Anyway, this is the site construction period, and as you can see, the politics around it contain the names of those who have passed. More than 310 municipalities. The column goes out and falls over the edge, breaks up into individual living, reflecting individual look across to the first row of trees on the other side and realize how enormous these buildings were. Now look up and imagine 110 floors straight up. A building across us is over 70 floors. Imagine another 40.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Bill said, my name is Tracy. Hold on. Alrighty, we got it. My name is Tracy, and I was a New York City Board of Education teacher back in 2001. I taught in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, just about 10 miles away from the site. That morning, my husband Marty was working on in the elections. The primary elections were taking place that morning. So he was already out of the home. My son Terry went to work. He was 24 years old, and I went to work. Anybody who is outside of the New York area and the United States, they would have seen a lot more than we knew. We really did not know what was going on then. The first inkling that I had that there was a problem was when my husband called my school. He spoke to me and he immediately asked me where Terry worked. And I said, North Tower, 104th floor, was 658 people that morning. And so that's all I knew. I knew the plane went into the building. I thought it was a really festive plane. Terry's friend called Terry at work, and he said to Terry, "What are you doing there? Your building is on fire." His office was across the Hudson in New Jersey. He could see the tower on fire. And he said, "They told us to wait, but we're leaving now." Terry and the other 1,364 people did not know that they were not going to get out of that building that morning. So as the events went on, I got home from school, turned on the television and did what everybody else did, watched the constant reruns, and I couldn't believe how bad it was. It was much worse than we had thought. I had heard about Shanksville, Pennsylvania. I had heard about the Pentagon. I heard about the tower collapse at the South Tower first and then the North Tower. So, I realized that it was a big problem. And then, of course, it all came out about the fact that it was terrorists. This was their way of getting back to the United States. So, days went on. Marty and I, along with many family members, began to put posters up. If you were in the gallery 2, where you saw the posters, that was the first memorial that went up for people who were lost, because we had no way of finding one of them. There were over 20,000 body parts and only 174 whole bodies, which was considered anything half of the torso, that was considered a whole body. So we searched, we inquired. Penn Fitzgerald was wonderful. They took care of us at the Plaza Hotel. They set a room up for us to go. But I had no reference point because Terry and all the people who he worked with had died that morning. So I had nobody to go to. Say, "Did you know my son? What was he doing? What was it like?" And maybe that's a blessing, because I can conjure my own stuff up in my own head. But I'm hoping and praying that he died from smoke inhalation, and he didn't even know what happened as the building collapsed. I just want to tell you that a little bit about Terry as a person. In November of 2002, I was packing a gym bag of clothes for his cousin, who was studying in graduate school in Albany, New York. And I just said, "Let me give these clothes to him, he can use them." Something in my head said, "Check the side pocket." And in the side pocket were 3 pieces of paper. Terry had written down the goals that he wanted to accomplish within the 6 months of his life. He wrote them in January. He had written them down. And a friend of mine of his told me later that they sat down to write these goals. And one was with his family, his business life, and his friends. It was such a great deal for Marty and I to find these papers, because it was an affirmation of what he knew he stood for. He was on his way. Of course, he was so terribly loved as a family member. One of the things that he said was that he wanted to take care of my husband and I in our golden years. And believe me, he has. He has looked out for us. He has watched over us. I can't tell you in how many ways. And he has protected us. His friends and his family, cousins and everything, he was very, very close to. I am still great in touch with a lot of the people that he was involved with back in 2001 in his high school years. His business life, he was on his way. He was studying for the Series 7, which is a big deal. I understand in investments. I have no idea what that means. But anyway, it was a big deal. And he was really going to make his mark in the business world. But as a person, Terry was a very loving and caring person. He always took care of other people. And I am truly grateful that I had the pleasure of being his mother for 24 years. I thank you for coming to tribute. It means so much to Bill and I, because this is how you can connect with us. You can see these memorials and you know the stories behind them. and it's so very important for us that you understand it. This is the last picture I have of Terry that was taken in 2001 in August, and I treasure it daily. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And I had quite a bit of time to try and reach my children. I have 3 daughters, and they were all in separate locations because they're all 4 years apart. Back then they were all in different schools, and I couldn't reach any of them. And I wanted them to know just that I love them. Because really, in my 27 years on the job, I never went to a fire, I never responded to an emergency where I thought I was going to be killed. You just don't think that way in the fire department. You're assigned a job, and as soon as you go out the doors to respond, you're already thinking about your task and how you're going to approach it, how you're going to enter the building, all of these kinds of things that you're trained to do. So you don't really dwell on the fact that you could be killed in that particular situation. On 9/11, we didn't know what we were going to do. This was unparalleled. And so I was unable to reach my children, and I was terrified that they weren't going to hear from me. And as I made my way down here, we saw all these people leaving, and they were just covered in white ash, and they looked terrified. You know, their eyes were like deer in the headlights look. And the way I got here is we got to this street here, what they call West Street, but a few blocks north of here, and then we walked down to approach the site. And as I came down, I saw all these people leaving, and we're still coming down until I finally saw some firefighters who were leaving, which I thought was strange, and I said, "Where are you going?" And they said, "We've had orders to evacuate the scene," which meant how bad it was. And as soon as that was said, I could hear the North Tower start to groan, and you could tell it was buckling and it was going to collapse. And I just yelled out, "Run!" And I turned around, and everybody just started literally running for their lives. This is actually a picture of the beginning of the collapse of the South Tower. It's just the top broke apart, and it just forced the building to collapse in on itself. And what it created when the 2 towers collapsed was actually worse than this. This was later when the winds were blowing everything south. When the buildings first collapsed, this dust cloud was all black from this light stuff, and it extended out into the water and all around. It was worse than this. And when we're running away from this, that building collapsed in mere 10 seconds. And this debris field and dust cloud overtook us within seconds. I was running, and I could see where I was going. And then suddenly, just as quickly, I was running in total darkness. And I don't even like to call it darkness. I like to call it total blackness, because I couldn't even see my arms move. It was just complete blackness. And I was terrified. Human beings are not meant to run in the dark. You can't do it. And your body makes you slow down even if you're terrified. And I was terrified. And I'm running, and I'm breathing in this stuff, which was that building and everything that was in it that was disintegrating. And it was super hot. And I'm breathing it in, and it's burning my sinuses and my eyes and my throat. Even into my lungs, I could feel it burning. And there's nothing I could do about it. And as I'm breathing it in, it's caking up. And I could feel my airway getting smaller and smaller. And I just wound up falling on the ground, either losing my balance or tripping, because we were getting hit by debris. I was getting hit by stuff, and lucky we have heavy equipment that we were in. Because I wound up falling on the ground, and I just curled up into a ball, and I just tried to force myself to think of my children, to see their faces, because I knew I was about to die, and I didn't want to die in terror. I wanted to have at least a moment of calmness in my last minute. And so that's all I tried to do. And it's almost like I didn't even think about what was going on around me. I just lay there, and then suddenly it just went quiet. And it was over. And I've heard some people say they didn't know if they were dead or alive. And I don't know how they could say that, because I was laying there, still breathing that stuff in. It's still burning my lungs. I knew I was alive, because I was hurt. I was burning. And I had to wait for that stuff to lift up and lighten up before I could even stand up and look around. And all I could see was debris covered by this white ash. And it was literally like I had been transported to the moon. It was just all this white ash everywhere, and like a war zone. And I got up when I could, and I didn't see many people around me until I really started moving. And yet there had been lots of people around me. And as I started moving, I would try to walk around the debris, but you couldn't help it. You would step on stuff, and sometimes you would step and realize it was debris, and other times I would step and it would be soft and I would realize it was a person. So I bend down to try and see if they were alive, and that's when I would realize that it wasn't a complete person. And so I was in pretty much a human minefield, just walking amongst these remains, as Terry mentioned. People that were in those buildings, just got torn apart. Some of the people on the ground got torn apart. I just feel like firefighters on the ground were lucky because we had our gear on. When I went home that night, went to take a shower, I looked in the mirror and my back was just so bruised I couldn't believe it. I had so much adrenaline rushing through me during the day that I didn't even know I was injured. I just kept going, all the adrenaline, until after a while you have so much adrenaline in your system, it makes you sick. Literally makes you throw up. I was doing that anyway to get this stuff out of my lungs and everything. But I had 5 surgeries in the aftermath of 9/11. And when I got up off that ground, I thought I was perfectly okay, except for the stuff I breathed in. My respiratory system was ravaged, my sinuses were destroyed. I'm always, most of the time, sniffling after. Somebody mentioned earlier today, I look like I'm doing cocaine or sniffling so much. I'm not doing cocaine. I just have my sinuses burnt away. It's not going to get better. But I'm not complaining, mind you. I was able to reach my children eventually and not tell them that I love them, but tell them that I'm okay, I'm alive. The best message you can give to a kid. And the end result is that all those other firefighters in the buildings were killed. So for me, I feel like I have to do this to be their voice. Because, you know, those guys were brave. They lost their lives on that day. And I don't want, just like family members don't want their family, their loved ones to be forgotten, I don't want the memory of those fallen firefighters to be forgotten. So that's why I try and do these stories. Thank you again for coming out on such a cold day. I talked a little bit before about the aftermath of 9/11, of this, excuse me, this site all came to be. all the deliberations and all that took to get us to the point we're at now. And this is a little bit of a view of, not exactly today, but the future. So we segue into the future, and you can see some of it already. This building in the corners, that building over there, already completely built to its full height and slated to open sometime next year, 2014. This building, which is right here, and is also completely built to its total height of 1,776 feet. That's to the tip of that antenna on top. The building itself is pretty much the same height as the old Twin Towers were, over 1,300 feet. The antenna makes the difference. Anyway, that's slated to open sometime next year. And then you see these other buildings and the Memorial Plaza. This is not a picture, obviously, because those buildings don't exist yet. It's an artist rendering, that's what I like to call it, artist rendering. And they left some things out. Now these buildings hopefully will be built. And the reason I say that is because of the tall buildings on the site. As I mentioned before, they wanted to build them all small. They wind up being tall. They have to occupy these buildings before they'll build the other ones. Now recently, this building, which will be over in that area, got its primary tenant, a tenant that committed, and that will rent several of the floors in the building. So they're starting the building of that building. And that's somewheres along the way. We'll work on getting a primary tenant in this building, and then hopefully that one will go up. So really what we're looking at is probably at least 6 years from now before this site will be finished. Maybe more than that. I like to say 2020, like my eyesight, except my eyesight isn't 2020. Nevertheless, we never know, because since this site has been worked on, things have changed all the time. For example, they left something out of this diagram. That building over there that looks like a fallen tower, that's going to be where we make our way to our next and final stop. That's the home of what will be the National Museum. I don't know why they left it out of this artist rendition. Is that what I call it? Artist rendering? But they did. Designed